Hey guys, Brook Potter here, coming to you live from Aberdare, Wales. This morning, I thought it would be fun if I did the political compass test, which I thought would have been fun. I really should have done this before, maybe a couple of years ago, and I know my results would have been very different. I probably would have been a hardcore, libertarian free market, practically ANCAP at some stage. I think I've kind of evolved my views a little bit. I still maintain that I'm pretty much a minarchist. I don't think we need no government. Obviously, you need some kind of central authority just to tell you what side of the road to drive on. For instance, if everybody could do what they want on the road, it really would be some kind of anarchy. But yeah, so I'm going to do the test. Again, it would have been great to compare it, but this is where we're at. So yeah, let's go ahead and do this. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. No, if corporations can't pursue their own interests, which is, to make money, they can't do any good. If they just, serve people and they don't make money, they can't do any good. Now, I'm not saying that corporations don't have a social responsibility, but they got to make money first in order to be able to make any impact. I'll always support my country, whether it's right or wrong. No, strongly disagree. Yeah, that's if my country's doing something wrong, I have no problem with criticizing the country and the leadership, especially the leadership. No one chooses his or her country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. No, strongly disagree. Yeah, I know people, they don't choose their country. They definitely free to dislike their country. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with being proud of, the heritage and stuff like that. I mean, I moved from Trinidad and Tobago to come out to the UK. Because I wanted to be part of British culture. So, I can't say that I'm exceedingly patriotic out here, but I like being, part of the British culture. So, our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. I guess this is the alt-right detector. I mean, this is a kind of silly question. Every race and within our DNA, there's qualities for everything, for intelligence, strength, athleticism. I mean, the Chinese figured this out a long time ago, which is why when they go to the Olympics, they don't put anybody in track and field. They focus on gymnastics because they just understand genetically the Chinese, do not have what it takes to compete with the triathletes and the track and fielders. So I'm going to agree with this slightly, but it's an irrelevant question because, as we more and more mixing going on, like I personally am mixed, those traits are genetic. I don't necessarily think they're part of the race. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Not always. Not always. Yeah. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Yeah, agreed. I mean, what quantifies international law these days? It's if you're relying on things like the UN and other things like that, it's just a saber rattling. There's just a lot of noise. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. I'm not necessarily sure what this means. A worrying fusion of information and entertainment. If you mean propaganda and information, I'll definitely agree with that, depending on what they mean. All right, next page. Page 2. Now, the economy. Okay. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. Strongly agree. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. Yeah, I agree with that to a certain extent. There's very little we can do to control unemployment. We can free up the market and hope that more people are employed. But inflation is that's something we actually can make wise decisions policy wise to control. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. No, that's obviously not true. I mean, corporations are not these benign, these soulless mechanisms. They are people. And if they understand the social pressures and stuff like that, as we're seeing right now, Coca-Cola and a lot of these other bottling companies, because of social pressure, are trying to change their plastic use and do these different types of things. And there's no regulation that's come upon that. In fact, a lot of people don't seem to understand that if you looked at places like London and these big cities 100 years ago, if you took somebody from 100 years ago and brought them to London today, the first thing they'd say is like, oh my God, it's so clean. Because we went from burning fossil fuels and coal and lamps and, steam engines and all that kind of stuff to mostly an electrical grid without much regulation. Innovation and technology brought about a lot of those changes. So it's not necessary to regulate corporations to protect the environment. From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. No, that's Marx. I mean, as Thomas Sowell would say, like, how much are you entitled to, what's your fair share of another man's labor? And, people who don't necessarily work are not necessarily entitled to the fruits of their labor. So, yeah, I disagree with that. The freer the market, the freer the people. Unfortunately, no, this is not necessarily true. We look at China. China has a very free market, and they're, authoritarian in nature. A lot of people criticized, who was it? I think Milton Friedman had praised some fascist dictator in, I guess it must have been Pinochet maybe. He was very free market, but he was very authoritarian as well. So no, it does not equate that, a free market automatically equals freer people. It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. No, I don't disagree. I don't agree. It doesn't matter if people want to bottle air and sell it and people are willing to pay for it. Buyer beware. I don't think that's a bad thing. And especially given the amount of, subtle pollutions and stuff like that in our drinking water, like as I keep telling people, everybody is on female birth control because the amount of, the hormones and the estrogen passes through and our filtration systems can't take them out. Yeah, sometimes you might want to bottle the water to try and get rid of some of the things that the municipalities can't clear out. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Yeah, I strongly disagree. That's my kind of part of my business. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. No, manipulating money actually creates more money. And this is also part of my business. You don't just manipulate money. You invest and you trade and you speculate and stuff like that, and you usually make money. And sometimes for shareholders and retirees and grandma and other things like that. So no, that's not a thing. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. Oh God, unfortunately, I do have to agree with this, especially what we've seen coming out of China. The recent libertarian vice president candidate, Spike, for 2020, he was asked about this issue concerning the issues in China and how, they're manipulating their currency and manipulating their trade wars. And the truth is, if we had all-out free trade with countries that are cheating or are subsidizing their labor or, devaluing their currency to make it price competitive, you can't deal with people who are not dealing with you in good faith. And unfortunately, some actors, around the world are not dealing in good faith. So sometimes you do have to take action to try and protect your national interests. So, I mean, I wish free trade, everybody was playing by the same rules, but the reality is, that's just not the case. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. I can't say it's the only social responsibility. It's definitely the first responsibility, but I disagree that it's the only social responsibility. Yeah. So, I mean, you have to, as a company, you have to be making profits. Otherwise you can't do anything. You can't be good at all. The rich are too highly taxed. Yeah. Strongly agree. Where's that? Yeah. Especially in the US, I think like the top, 10% pay half of the income tax. And I think the top 20 or 30% is like almost 97% of the income tax and stuff like that. So yeah, it's not a fair system in that respect. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. Yeah, of course. Why not? Government should penalize businesses that mislead the public in court. I hope they're, not doing fiat sorts of actions and stuff like that, just being dictated from politicians. Politicians know very little about the economy and very little about business. If it is that somebody's mistreated the public, some company, by all means, take them to court. That's what contract law is all about. So yeah, I wouldn't strongly agree because I don't really want the government doing too much. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predatory multinationals to create monopolies. That's a good question. No, I don't necessarily think all monopolies are bad. However, in these recent days, we've seen the results of what happens in the tech monopolies. But the problem is tech naturally flows towards a monopoly. So Google and Facebook and YouTube and these other things, we see how they're censoring, more conservative voices and stuff like that. But there really isn't much of a solution. So I don't think we can. I think some industries naturally flow towards a monopoly. So that's a tricky question. All right, now look at some of your personal social values. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. No, disagree. I come from Trinidad and Tobago. Abortion is illegal, and many young girls have lost their lives through back alley abortions and stuff like that. I think make it legal and try and educate people to keep it as limited as possible. All authority should be questioned. Absolutely. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Sometimes, because people do knock out their eye by accident. So not as a life principle. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theater or museum that cannot survive on a commercial basis. I agree with this for the most part. I mean, if you're housing a museum that nobody wants to see, and you're taking up resources that might be better used for something else, maybe. But I do think we should preserve art, history, and these other things. It's a tricky question, because I do believe in preserving culture, and I think a lot of one of the flaws of libertarians is they don't take culture into account. So I think that is necessary, but so I can't strongly agree with that. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. Yes, strongly agree with that. I definitely, especially if the classes are, just, feminist dance theory or whatever kind of leftist nonsense they're pushing now. All people have the right, but it is better for all of us that different sorts of people keep to their own kind. I guess this is an alt-right speculation. The right to association, I don't think it's necessarily better that we all just kind of segregate. But yeah, if you want to, by voluntary action, segregate yourself, that's your business. I don't disagree with that. I don't think it's better by any stretch of the imagination, so I'll disagree with that. Good parents sometimes have to spank their kids. Yeah, unfortunately, I agree with that. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Yeah, it is natural. I don't know. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I think it is natural. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Strongly agree. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find a job. Yes, I would hope also to teach people to think, but that seems to be outlawed in today's society. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. Disagree. I don't think we should get involved in that at all. Most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. I don't think that's the most important thing, although it is an important thing. I don't think it's the most. I think being able to think is probably the most important thing, and discipline is definitely probably second up there. There are no savage or civilized people. There are only different cultures. Yes, I agree with that too. I think culture definitely has a lot to do with it. But then as I say, there's some people who don't want to change their culture, and I don't know. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, if you're able-bodied, and I don't think my labor should be going to support somebody who could also be pulling their fair share. When you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. If you're troubled, definitely experience the emotions. Don't try to run from it. But worrying, of course, is a fruitless endeavor that doesn't change anything. So yeah, focus on what you can change, I would say. I don't necessarily keep busy with more cheerful things. If they just mean distraction, no, that's not what I mean. But try and make progress in the areas that you do have control. First generation immigrants can never fully integrate within their new country. Strongly disagree. People who love the United States, the UK, wherever, they come and they assimilate. A lot of first generation immigrants to many countries, love the country and they wanted to be part of it. They learn the language. Not everyone, but yeah, it's absolutely possible. So What's good for the most successful corporation is always ultimately good for all of us. No, disagree. Google, YouTube, Facebook, social media censorship and stuff like that is, while they're very profitable, their active censorship is not good for some of the users and creators. No broadcasting institution should, however independent its content, should receive public funding. Yeah. Strongly agree. It just becomes a propaganda wing for the government at the end of the day. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. Yeah, agree. A significant advantage of a one-party system is that it avoids all arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. No. The one-party system in China is definitely, it has its own set of internal arguments, and not only that, there's a cutthroat process of removing people from power. So, having a one-party system doesn't solve that. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, or only wrongdoers need to be worried. No, the right to privacy is a real thing. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious of crimes. Yeah, I agree with that. Not too strongly, though. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. You do need leadership in a society. I don't know if they're above and below, but we do definitely need some kind of leadership. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art. No, I'm a fan of Salvador Dali, and his stuff is, is very weird. In a criminal justice system, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. No, retributive justice and restorative justice. I'm a fan of restorative justice. The Norway model is a good example of that. Although I don't dispute that there are like psychopaths that, probably are beyond rehabilitation, and, it's just about controlling them. But is it a waste of time to try and rehabilitate some question? Well, yeah, I agree. Some criminals are actually beyond you cannot rehabilitate somebody who does not want to be rehabilitated, just like you can't change somebody's mind who doesn't want their mind changed. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. Unfortunately, yes, business people and manufacturers tend to employ more people. They tend to have a more positive contribution to society. Writers and art, I'm not saying that those things are not important, but they're not as important. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. If they want. I don't think that's completely up to their choice. Whatever they decide to do with their life is completely up to them. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. No, definitely not. I am completely in favor of countries developing. When these multinationals go out to poor countries, usually they pay the best wages. Even though like we might call it the sweatshop conditions, the people there choose that option freely over dying on the farms or whatever the case might be. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. Not sure what that means. I prefer to recognize that you can't necessarily change the establishment. So yeah, I don't know if that's what making peace with the establishment means. All right, 5. Astrology accurately explains many things. Disagree. You cannot be moral without being religious. No, I strongly disagree. Charity is better than social security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. Strongly agree. I don't necessarily think you need one or the other. I think we should have mutual aid societies, and you can have some kind of government social safety net at the end. Some people are naturally unlucky. Disagree. I think we make our own luck. It's important that my child's school instills religious values. I agree with that. If I was in any kind of politics, I would definitely want to try and promote a religious society. Otherwise, it is one more aspect to try and, control the society and keep people from going off. Sex outside of marriage is usually immoral. No, strongly disagree. Same-sex couples in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child. I agree with this. The science is still out on how this affects the children and stuff, but yeah, until I see anything to say it's really harmful. I mean, it's not even to say that same-sex couples are doing a great job raising their kids anyway. So I think, I don't necessarily think that's an issue. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. Yeah, strongly agree. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. Yeah, I strongly agree. No one can feel naturally homosexual. I've never been a homosexual. I can't speak to that, but I suspect if it's anything like being straight, if they are going through the same thing, maybe they do feel naturally that way. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. Yeah, I kind of think, that's probably true. All right, so let's see where we stand. Right. Yes, we know. Where am I? Where's the results? There we go. So I'm a social libertarian. I'm definitely not a big state interventionist. Give people more social freedom, but I do understand the realities that, countries out there are not playing fair. I'm still a nationalist in some respects. I do believe borders matter. As I say, if we had open borders and suddenly, 500 million Chinese suddenly came into one particular country, they would change the entire country, and the country would, no longer be what it is and stuff like that. So, yeah, guys, hope you enjoyed that. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. And as always, thanks for watching. Take care.